How's the harvest going, guys?
He's a farmer.
What a year.
Yeah.
What a year, man. Holy shit. It's just strawberries. It's crazy because our number one crop is strawberries here. And from the beginning, when the season started in May, it looked okay. You know, it wasn't too bad. We had some rain, but not too much.
Yeah.
But then June rolled around. Holy shit. I don't think we've had a June like that I don't know. I don't think I can remember a June like that.
Yeah.
Can you remember June like that?
Yeah, it's funny because that's why I mentioned that.
Yeah.
When I grew up in the raspberries, we always had really rainy June, July, like a lot of rain in between. Like I remember picking berries and we'd have 2 days off for rain and we'd pick and then it'd be a day off. Every week there was at least 1 day of heavy rain, all growing up. And since 2015, I would say, we've had extremely warm, dry April, May, June, Julys. Like I remember our farm in Arnold, I never used to irrigate because we were just enough to get through the harvest season. It didn't matter after that.
Okay.
After 2015, they started drying up, and then we had to start getting sulfur out. Like we had way too much iron in the water.
Yeah.
So I finally gave up when I sold the farm. I sold half the farm off to somebody, and then
In Arnold.
So we
Okay.
got rid of a bunch of it. And I just planted black currants right now, which they don't care about rain.
I see.
So, but the interesting thing is that the weather pattern used to be like it is this year was normally the way it was in my childhood. This is normal. I actually said to Koreans, this is actually normal. Like
No way.
for the bulk of my life, this
Yeah.
is normal. But it's been only the last, I'd say maybe 10 years, we've gotten drier, warmer summers.
Yeah.
And this is kind of like a flip back to where it was back then. So it's kind of like it waffles back and forth.
Yeah, exactly. Well, 2 years ago, I think it was 2 years ago, I loved that season. It was because it was about 3 days of sun, 1 day of rain. 3 days of sun, 1 day of rain. And just like you said before, you barely had to irrigate. For strawberries, it was fine.
Yeah.
It's not a big deal. Like, okay, 1 day of rain, a little bit of rain. Sure, the plants get wet. It's a little bit of powdery mildew or some botrytis.
Yeah.
But end of the day, like if you have those 3 hot days, kind of like burns it off or it just hangs out. But when you have those 3 days of rain, or 4 days of rain,
It's that
hard.
third or fourth day of
Yeah.
intense moisture, high humidity, then that's when the infections come in. You can't really control it at that point.
No.
Like our goji berries this year, it was our second year with them.
Yeah.
I mean, Peter planted them originally, 5 years ago, right? 2014, 2015, that's when it got really dry. He had successful summers every year with them. So we moved them out of our field, and it was our first year we've had what I call a traditional summer.
Yeah.
And like about every fifth berry is rotting off. So now I'm going to send people out there picking.
Oh my goodness.
And there's nothing you can do about
Yeah.
it, right?
Yeah.
And you don't want to get in there with. I bought this little Chinese hand machine that picks berries. Like it's a little battery operated thing, and it's got these little fingers that go like this. I don't know. It was like $400, whatever it was.
Yeah.
But we want to use it, but that means it's going to be picking we have to almost shake the bad ones off first and then use them. You know, like, how are you going to do that?
My question for that would be is the BC production guide as a strawberry, raspberry, blueberry, currants, blackberry, cherries,
Cranberries?
cranberries, yeah. So it has all that, the BC production guide. It doesn't have anything for HASCAP.
Nope.
And so
And Goji.
And Goji. So are you looking at different areas of the world, or what are you doing in regards to the management practices?
You know what? It's the Wild West.
Is
for
it?
us. It's like we don't have anything we can spray on them legally, which we wouldn't, and obviously, so they're in a sense they're organic because we don't do any sprays on them.
Okay.
Like we mow the grass next to them
Yeah.
and whatever. So on the farm, that's an area that definitely is completely chemical free.
Oh wow, that's
Yeah.
great because you don't know what
But
the PHIs are.
Goji berries
Yep.
are from the tomato family. So anything that works with tomatoes works with them.
Really?
So you have to have almost a
Really?
tomato mindset when you work with goji berries.
Outdoors.
Yeah, and outdoor. So really, they do well under hoop structures, but I don't want to
Yeah.
spend. I don't want to spend the money on it. It's like super expensive. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, of course.
I got offered to put one in. I was hummed and hawed this spring.
Yeah.
Because there was one sitting there ready for me to pick up. But I didn't have enough workers here at COVID,
Oh, of course.
so we couldn't pick up the
Oh,
structures. We couldn't
goodness.
put them in. I just said, you know what?
Can't do it.
Thank you, COVID.
Yeah.
That's the year we live in.
No, exactly. You got to take it as it comes, especially with this year.
Yeah.
It's sometimes it's a blessing in disguise. Later on, you look at it in hindsight, like you're saying.
I mean, you guys are really one of the pioneers of the industry.
Yeah, I remember
Agritourism.
working with you guys like years ago, like when you were a kid and you used to come with your mom, and you guys had the station wagon or a hatchback, and you bring your berries. And I had a little TD cooler. I had this small cooler. It's all we used for our berries or fresh market sales, and we had a little section there. And I said,
Oh my gosh.
you guys would rent a little part of it from us, and
Oh,
I think I
my
charged like $2 a day or something like that. Or something like that. I don't know what it was. So yeah.
And how long ago do you think that was?
That was probably in the early 2000s.
Oh wow.
That was a time, I think, after you had an accident or something like that. I remember
Yeah.
seeing you,
Yeah.
and I remember coming and visiting at your guys' place too. You invited me over. Your parents did over there on
Town Line.
Yeah,
Town Line, yeah.
Town Line there, and I came and visited
Yeah.
you guys one
Probably
time.
98, 99.
That's probably what it was.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
all blurry for me back. That's
Yeah,
20
yeah.
years ago, right?
Yeah, 100%. Whenever my mom tells a story about how this originated with someone who's in the
Yeah.
industry, my mom always goes,
Yeah.
well, Loren Taves really helped us understand that having a tourism aspect to your farm will draw the people in. As you got into the industry that you are, you said you're an opportunist. How did that all amalgamate to where you are now?
I'll put it down into a few words. A farmer without land isn't a farmer. So I'll kind of go backwards on that. So we would rent land, we'd plant a crop, and we'd get dependent on that crop. And then the owner of the land would say, hey, I want to sell the land. And we'd say, either we lose that crop or we buy the land. So then I'd go, oh my goodness, I want to borrow that much money. Will the bank even let me? And for some crazy reason, the bank would. So we'd borrow money and buy a farm. We'd work hard to pay off the land because you wanted to keep that crop. I was in love with the crop.
Yep.
Right? I love growing things. But then without land, I can't grow things. So, and if you don't own it, the land, then it can be taken away like that. Guy says, oh, I don't want you to rent anymore. And then you planted something there, a perennial,
Yep.
like apple trees. They're there for 30. I have apple trees that are 31 years old this year. You know what I mean? Like 32-year-old apple trees.
Wow.
And they're still producing very well.
Unbelievable.
So there was this, and that happened 2 times, actually 3 times, but 2 major times in my farming career where I had to make a decision to go and borrow a crap load of money and buy a farm in order to maintain the farming that I was doing on it. And that is what I meant opportunist. I had to take the opportunity. And that is actually how we grew. I grow vegetable greenhouses. I was not a greenhouse vegetable grower. I had an orchard planted around the greenhouse. I found a partner to buy the entire farm, and eventually I bought him out. So I became both a greenhouse grower and an orchardist at the same farm. And it was just because I had to, because I wanted to hang on to my apples. I love them.
Yeah.
So
You never
I
planted.
ended
You
up
never
growing
planted.
these crazy vegetables because I wanted to keep apples. Is that
That's
stupid?
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. But then how did the chickens come into play?
That was my dad's end of it.
Okay.
So that's actually a very good raspberry story. It actually is. It's a
Go for
funny
it. Yeah,
raspberry
we're
story.
here. We're here, ready for it.
Okay, so back in '69, he bought the farm,
Okay.
and then he got some raspberry plants. You know how they used to put T-loan down to fumigate the crops?
Oh yeah. They used to put it over top and put it in
Yeah, to kill the
Foliage
nematodes,
or,
because the nematodes would kill the roots of the
No,
plants,
of
right?
course, of
So you have
course.
to always wrote nematodes are microscopic worms that attack the plants of the raspberries, right?
I know.
So back then, the only way people knew how to deal with it, because they didn't know any organic methods back then,
Yeah.
is you had to T-loan the field. So the guy T-loaned the field, but he didn't do it right. So he planted in after that, and all the berry plants died. This is back in 1970. So then he went and bought new plants. My mom and dad, they're hard workers. We'd be out there with kids holding
Yeah.
with them, picking up rocks, I was like blowing up stumps and everything else that were in there. And then I remember they bought again, so they planted another crop. And the next year, raspberries got really expensive. So they split all the raspberry crowns and they sold off as a nursery, and they made a lot of money on that.
Just by selling the plants.
by splitting their plants.
Yes.
Wow.
Right? So they could keep part of it for growing and split some of it for selling.
Mm-hmm.
So in about 3 years, they got 7 ton an acre.
Which is illegal, by the way.
What?
It's illegal to split the raspberry crowns and sell them off.
Oh, back then, I'm not sure. if
Back
it
then,
was.
of course, back then. it
Back in
wouldn't be.
'72.
But now with the patents going on.
Oh, there was
Yeah,
no
yeah,
patent.
no,
It was a Willamette.
There's so many
It was the
patents now.
Willamette variety.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's like-
that's not even existing anymore.
No.
Yeah.
So, anyways, it was Willamettes they were growing, and they got 7 ton an acre. I think the price was $1.25 at the time. Now, remember back in '72, $1.25 is like getting $3.50 a pound right now. So they did. My dad was a school teacher, and
Yep.
we'd work on the side. We'd all go after supper and work. You guys know the drill.
Yeah, 100%.
We're farmers, right?
100%.
We're hoeing, cutting tops. We had some cattle back there and everything
Doesn't
else.
stop.
So he made a lot of money off of that. He was teaching at the same time. My dad worked 7 days a week. He never stopped working.
Uh-huh.
So he got his reward for working hard and being innovative was that he had successes in life. But he was always humble. He always spent it back on the farm. He always drove an old truck. He always had the same suit for years. He never spent on himself. He always spent on the farm because that's how he was. That's how he thought. And then what happened was he bought a broiler chicken farm out in Langley, where you know when you're going down to Langley and you're going down that hill by the hospital, and you're going towards the old town Langley, like
Oh yeah.
on Fraser Highway.
Yeah, on the
There's
left.
kind of like a school and a church, kind of a big, huge. That was his farm. He bought the farm with old chicken barns on it.
Okay.
And
It's
in
kind of near the main road, isn't it?
Yeah, back in '77 he bought it, and in
Wow.
1980 he built barns where we live now,
Yeah.
2 double-deckers, and he moved the quota over there, and we've been farming them ever since.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Smart guy.
And it was berry money
That got the chickens.
that started out, and the bank gave him a big loan, and he was able to, I think he took a $400,000 loan back then. That was a big loan. That was like
course.
taking a $4 million loan out
No,
today.
of course.
Okay.
Your current day-to-day life, is it divided amongst all of those different areas? Mostly just agritourism, chickens, greenhouses, and your orchard?
I would say mostly right now a good focus is the COVID labor, the cidery, because it's new and it's a new business and we're learning. And there's lots of like, oh my goodness, I have to do this now. Oh, what's that? There's so much learning.
Yep.
So it absorbs a lot of my mind.
I see.
And then also dealing with the business of the farm, mortgages, budgeting, and trying to keep just keeping the whole thing rolling.
I got you.
You know.
Do you ever have time to look back and say, "Holy shit! Look where things are now," or where things got to?
You know, I do lately is I'm going to be serious about that. I'll get a little chair, and I'll bring my notepad, and I'll go down and sit amongst the goats
Oh yeah.
for about an hour, and I'll just kind of like do a Zen moment with them, and I'll just write out stuff that comes to my mind. And they'll come over and they'll nibble on you. You know how they are. They're so playful.
They're
And I
curious.
find that brings a lot of clarity in your thinking because it takes you back to
The ground.
the goats
Wow.
and the little things. What are they worth? $150 if you go and buy them from a monetary value.
Yeah.
And you're dealing with all this farming, but I find that those little things in life are the things that count. The small things. And I think then when you that kernel of thought, the little things, that means then the big things become easy to work with.
I see. What do you see your life going on to? What is next for you? What is next for your business? For yourself personally as a leader in the local industry? Where do you see things?
That's a good question because I've been asking myself that lately quite a bit. I had cancer last year, and I went through kind of like when you go through something like that, you sort of think a little differently, maybe slowing down. Well, that's not really me, but just take life a little bit more one day at a time, and just love everything that comes your way, and don't ever get stressed about anything. Even just one of the person in my office I love talking to said 5 minutes, 5 years. If it's not going to affect you for more than 5 years, don't waste 5 minutes on it. When things come your way, it looks like the whole world's coming to an end. Sometimes in life you it's just everything's coming.
Yeah.
And you stop and it's almost like you freeze time and you kind of go 5 minutes, 5 years. Okay, now I'll send it my way and I'll deal with it.
Yeah.
But where am I going? Got a lot of kids. My
Yeah.
youngest is 8. So and my oldest is 21.
How many kids do you have for the
I have
record?
eight kids.
There we go. We
I
need
have 5 boys and 3 girls.
good clip art right
Holy
there.
moly.
So-
Holy.
Was that planned?
Absolutely not.
Okay. I've never had kids. I wouldn't know.
No.
So
It was more of just kind of let life be what it is.
great.
I think that's kind of the way we thought when having kids. It was like, well, let life be what it is. And will I ever starve because of this? No. Do you think that having all these kids means that my life will come to an end? Well, no. Maybe actually life will become really interesting.
Exactly.
So, but would I do it again? I don't know. But I did what I did, and
Yeah.
I lived by it.
How do you get around with that many kids altogether?
Oh
How do you
my!
manage it?
That's the question.
That's
How do you get around?
Sometimes I have to say
Get
that
around?
my frustration comes in.
Yeah.
Driving.
Is it 2 trips usually, or do
Yeah,
you?
sometimes we have 2 vehicles. One's in a sense we have 3 because of that. Well, we have an older daughter. She helps rent, we help with the payments and things like that.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody pitches in.
Yeah, of course.
And so we have a little truck and a van, and then my regular farm truck, and then between that we can get it all done.
That's great.
So
That's
Wow.
awesome.
And you know, you live out. I have a little beef with ICBC and everything. Let me just say it right online here.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Out in the farms, we get penalized
What do you mean?
because, well, our kids can't get the license until they're like, 21. By the time they can finish all their L's and N's
Yeah.
and things like that,
about 2019.
and they don't have an option to take public transit because we live on farms. So in a sense, when they penalize people, they put systems in that makes it difficult for 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds to get a job, to get their license to go and do things. That actually is where they don't have an option to take public transit. I think sometimes we actually in the farming community we get kind of like to get it's not right.
I understand.
Yeah, but there you go. I have to do my little plug.
No, of
That's what I
course.
think. But
No,
it's true though.
How would you have it?
When I was 14, turning 15, I bought my car, and I drove it around the farm. It was a Dodge Colt. It was an 8-speed, beautiful little car, and it was manual. When I was 16, I got my license. On the first day, I drove to Vancouver with my friends. We drove around, and I knew what I was doing. And bang on, I had worked. I was out of the house, and I was 18, got a job. I was raring to go because I had independence, because I had wheels.
That's right. Independence. It does ruin independence.
And I look at my kids. My son, he's 16 now. And I compare my son, who's 16, to who I am right now. Completely different set of parameters that he
Yeah.
has to work in.
The environment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The environment. You're right. Well, I studied in Holland for 6 months, and there everything is so close. You're able to bike anywhere you want. We had to go on field trips. We'd bike to field trips.
Yeah.
30-minute bike ride. That's part of their life. It's not a big deal. But the thing is, the population density is unbelievable. They have
Yeah.
17 million people in, I think, 250 square kilometers. Like, it's tiny. They have so many people there.
Yeah.
But it's just well organized.
Yeah, it reminds me. I went to Holland, and I lived in Holland in 1990.
Okay.
91. And I lived in an orchard down in the southern Holland, and I learned how to prune these apple trees. Actually, I met the guy who got our trees from.
Wow.
So our initial trees that we
Wow,
got from.
unbelievable. Where do you see agritourism going? The COVID, of course, is a part of this conversation. I'm thinking that COVID's going to be gone, but the effects of COVID will, of course, be here. The timeline of when that's going to happen, a year, 2 years, who knows, right? But where do you see agritourism being
More
next year? Let's just say next year, and then it's taking me 5 years.
more sophisticated, because we have to respond to the structures that are being put in place by COVID. Like even this year, we struggled with coming up with our rate of pay in order to come on the farm, because we knew there'd be less people, but the cost of running the entire fall operation wouldn't change.
Nope.
And how do you predict how many pumpkins to plant? How do you predict? Apples is apples because it's perennial.
Yeah, you can't do anything about it.
But the annuals, like the sweet corn, the pumpkins, how do you know how much to plant? I just decided to plant about what I planted last year, maybe a little bit less. But then with having, I pay my staff really well. So but I have to hire them all year round, to keep good people. So we have other projects we do. We try to keep, so in the fall we have really good people. It's kind of like you do stuff in the other parts of the year that really turn over dollars, like don't really make any money, but it keeps people busy. Because you need them for when you really need them.
You're just making work.
So you make work that generates some cash, but doesn't really there's no profit in it.
We do the same.
So then we all do that, right?
Yeah.
But now you've got all that put into it, and then the fall comes and half the people come. Now how are you going to do it?
It's very difficult.
Yeah, so
It's very
we
difficult.
kind of did it. We kind of did what I call we put some fudge factors and kind of figure out, because we know people from Vancouver, or because we talk to people, they're still timid
Yep.
about going out. I won't expose my children to this because COVID's still around. There's
100%.
still that. So let's say it's 1/3 of the people don't come, or let's say 40% don't come, or 60% do, but your costs are the same.
Yeah.
What do you do? You have to charge a little more
Yeah.
so that you don't go bankrupt at the end of the year, and see what happens. Do you charge more because you're greedy? Absolutely not. I charge more because I want to stay in business and not go out of business.
But this is on the assumption that we are unable to get as many people as last year.
Yeah.
Are you 100% in belief of that?
I believe that.
I see.
Actually, I'll ask you a question.
Yeah.
Did you find more people for U-Pick or less people for U-Pick this year?
More.
So we feel our U-Pick will probably go up.
100% it will.
Yeah.
I guarantee you. It's.
But what
people-
about the farm events?
So
What does it
yes,
do with the farm?
yes, great. So people want an activity which they 100% know is going to keep them safe.
Yeah.
They want that assumption They want that expectation online that when they come to your farm, there's not going to be any issues. It's streamlined. It's simple. They want to think it through like that.
Yeah.
If it's complicated, I don't think they want it. Everyone knows when you have a bucket in your hand, you're going out into the field, you got lots of space. Like a farm is a place of space.
Yeah.
Right? So that's, of course, it's common sense. So that's why I think UPIC blew up. And also I think UPIC blew up because people are touching their own food that they're bringing home. No one else
Right.
touches it.
Yeah.
No one else
Local
touches
food, and I can go get it from the farm. They know where it's coming from. They know that the travel it took. They know it didn't come from some crazy place that maybe the guy spat on it. I mean, who knows,
Exactly.
right? They don't
Exactly.
know.
Yeah, they know. They have.
That's true. It's a good way of thinking
Complete
about
trust.
it. But I think what we would do is if we see that it's robust, regardless, we'll probably do is give discount days, and which we already do. We set up different days that are discount days. And the reason, I remember I had this heart-to-heart talk with one of my office people, and she and I were talking about it, and she said, she said, I don't want to charge much because I want to keep this place open for people that have a low budget or don't have a lot. I said, I feel exactly. We started 30 years ago. This is our 30th year being open, that is. And we opened to people with a good heart. We welcome people in. It's in our DNA, in the way we are to serve people. That's how we function.
To be hospitable.
So then we don't want to feel like we've never felt above who we are. We feel like we're servants. That's how my wife and I are, at least. And so are my staff.
My parents taught us the same way.
Yeah, and so then you don't want to do that, but then you have to look at, okay, what's going to happen. So one of our issues, though, too, just adding to the problem, is that we get very busy and there's lots of parking down on the roads. Now, we live in a dead-end road and we own a number of the farms down there. We know all the people down there, but it's not a sustainable model. So I kind of felt that this year might be the year to kind of, maybe that would slow down the number of people coming in order to have better parking for people, so the experience for people was become better.
Of course.
So in a sense, like I'm on Tourism Abbotsford board, and I've been reading a lot of, like, we get information from, and there's been a lot of places like the pyramids, a lot of the, these different, like in Hawaii, like the waterfalls, or like where everybody wants to go see them. So the very fact that everybody goes and sees them ruins the experience of going to see them.
Of course.
Yeah.
So what are they doing? Are they controlling the amount of people that are allowed to enter?
Well, you can do it that way. You can put a quota in how many people go in.
Yep.
Or you can just raise price before, so that not everybody will feel they want to afford to go there. Or if they do go there, they'll save up for it because it's really something they want to do. Instead of like, okay, my bucket list, I've got 500 things I'm going to do, and they're all cheap, so I can go and do them all.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things I read about tourism in the future is that the whole mindset that more is better is actually going to start to dissolve. And it'll be more experiences, and there'll be more, people will choose maybe less things that they do, a smaller plethora of different things that they were doing.
Yeah.
But then they'll focus on the things that they're really interested in.
More immersive experience? Is that
Don't
what
you guys think that there's more people coming to UPIC? Won't that have a residual?
Yeah, you
Going
pick
forward, more families come here. They're picking your berries. They're on your farm. So in 2021, you expect more people picking.
Well, even for our
And
picking,
it starts a family tradition.
yeah, we're not going to change our prices on picking. That's one thing. Like that's going to stay the same. It might go up a couple of pennies just for inflation, but that's not going to change.
Yes.
And we don't charge at the gate for picking. It's just for the hay rides and the fun stuff, like
Of
some of
course.
the more of the activity things. Like
Yes.
that. But we're not changing our pumpkin prices or anything like that. Like just inflationary changes, maybe 2% or something.
Sure.
Like that.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think what I'm saying is that, there's all these things that make it harder for a farmer. Looking long term, if you could take like a silver lining out of the whole thing, what would you say this is the one thing that, because of this happened, that was positive?
Yeah,
Maybe
interesting question.
5-10 years down the road, because we just got into Save on Foods. It's huge for us, right? But what I love about Save on Foods as a business, they support local more than anything else in the world.
Yeah.
Like they support local. They're all about BC. The guy told me he got rid of 25% of his international suppliers. He's bringing in local suppliers to cover
Really?
25% of people. Right? So don't you think going forward in 2021, 2022, 2023,
Well,
people will be supporting local even more because of this, because they had to stay at home?
You know, it's interesting you said that. I grow greenhouse products,
Yeah.
and we sell to through our distribution, which is Windset Farms. We sell to Costco, but
Yeah.
almost, I would say probably 95% of what we grow in the greenhouse goes to Costco USA.
Wow.
Holy.
And this year, for some reason, because I think there's a more of a sense towards health products, we grow the eggplant and mini peppers.
Yeah.
The prices went, and also with the American dollar getting strong,
Yeah.
prices went way up. Like COVID, in some ways, on the tourism part of it, I'm worried it will, maybe not the U-pick, but just the activities.
Yes.
Yeah.
Will lower the amount of money spent on those things or the
Yeah.
amount of people coming.
Yeah.
But on the other side of it, on the farming side, we were just shocked to see how much demand there was in the greenhouse for the greenhouse products. It went from here to here.
100%.
But my costs actually in the greenhouse, because labor went up, went from here to here. That was the first time probably in 5 years I've actually can say we might make money in the greenhouse. We've always lost money in the greenhouse. I don't know why I keep it. I keep it because there's an orchard around it. Sorry.
Wow. You've always lost money in the greenhouse.
Oh, it's been, always bouncing around break even.
Well, I need a greenhouse for my strawberries, so
What's that?
I need a greenhouse for my
I want to
strawberries.
make a deal with you.
Maybe. Well, I need high tunnels.
But it you know what it is? It's one of those things that's always there.
Yes.
Like it's a operation that size is you have to have management and you have to have, and then you have a good year and you have maybe 2 bad years and you have a good year.
How large
and
is
then
your
it goes
greenhouse?
around. What's that?
How large is it?
About 5 acres.
5 acres. That's a lot of work.
Yeah.
A lot of work. And agritourism for us has been down, like across the board.
It has. So
It
that's,
has.
I was going to
Agritourism.
ask you that.
So
actually.
people coming to the farm, visiting the goats, and being in the area in the back. That may just have to do with the weather, because the weather's been extremely wet,
Yeah.
or it's been extremely hot. We've had a few good weeks there, and we did have some pickup. I think not this last week, but the week before, it was pretty busy here, right? It was like what it usually is.
There was a couple good days.
It was a couple of good days, exactly. It was
Yeah.
about 20 something degrees. It was
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yes.
That I think weather, of course, has had effect on it.
Yeah.
Moving forward, going into fall, if the pumpkin patch is managed correctly, as you're saying, if you control the quota of people you're allowed in,
Yeah.
or if you control the price, I think that a business will be successful. But there has to be innovation put in place. For example, for the haunted gourmets, it's a numbers game,
Yeah.
More people you can put through the haunted gourmets, more money you're gonna make, right? It's a $30, $40 ticket. If you're putting 1,000 people through there, it's some good money, on an evening. However, it is a lot of expenses.
Yeah, a lot of people working there. I went through last year.
Oh, man, it's
I
ridiculous.
couldn't believe them. How many employees you had?
Yeah, and so the expenses of setting up, we go for about 2 months of just working on it to get it ready, right? And it's only on for 20 something days.
Yeah.
So those expenses are not going to change. This year, I know that there's a break-even point because we've done it for a few years. We know what our expenses are going to be. Of course, we can dial back on some of the things. And that break-even point, for me to hit it, I can't do it with 50 people.
Looking at 50 people, like we're only looking at for the structures, like in the petting barn, in the store,
Yep.
in the cidery, that area, the picnic area. But when it comes to anything like where it's a large outdoor, like the pumpkin patch,
You shouldn't have
which
to
is
worry.
so we kind of broken it up in our minds that way.
Yep.
The store is a bit limited, so we're going to have actually people, if they don't want to go into the store, we're going to have it set up so they can actually select online or
That's
what
awesome.
they want, and we'll go pick it for them.
That's awesome.
I want to stay longer, but I told my wife I'd be there at 7
It's all
o'clock
good,
to
man.
help.
It's all good, yeah. No, it was great talking
let's
to
do
you.
this again sometime.
100%. Thank you for coming. Really
You guys,
appreciate it,
next
Loren.
time you bring it over.